She's the backup in case Lara falls off track, my dad laughed, right as I spilled champagne behind the flower wall. Backup. That word hit harder than the RSVP spreadsheet they accidentally sent me, where my name was literally tagged, Backup Daughter Confirmed. 4 tabs for Lara's accomplishments. I got 1 row with my dress size, listed wrong. But when their perfect party turned into my CEO's surprise speech, and he bowed to me, publicly, I saw their faces break. They thought I stayed invisible. What they never saw? I built the code that built his empire. And now their lies were built on my blueprint. Things are about to shift, violently politely. But before we begin, let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. My name is Elise Morgan, and I'm 35 years old. Each morning, I walk down 12 floors to get my mocha from the Daily Grind, where baristas know me only as the quiet one from tech. My younger sister Lara, our parents' sparkling star since childhood, just launched her 3rd startup while I code in silence at Seattle's biggest tech firm. Mom and Dad still introduce me as their reliable daughter, their voice always dropping on that last word. My fingertips trace the edge of my phone, where the app I helped build glows with millions of active users, none knowing my name. The code inside carries my signature, buried deep where only developers look, right next to the original timestamp from my old pitch deck, the one that vanished from my laptop 3 years ago. My shoulders ease as I sip my coffee. Sometimes being overlooked has its advantages. But let me start from the beginning. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, wrapped in cream-colored silk paper that probably cost more than my monthly parking spot. I almost missed it among the usual stack of bills and junk mail. But there it was, Lara's signature flair, black tie engagement celebration at LA's most exclusive hotel, complete with gold leaf edging and a hand-calligraphed envelope. You know that feeling when your stomach drops before your brain catches up? That's how it hit me. I stood in my kitchen, coffee going cold, while memories of every family gathering flooded back. Lara center stage, me somewhere in the background, probably fixing someone's drink or adjusting the lighting so her photos would turn out perfect. I tossed the invitation onto my counter and opened my laptop, determined to lose myself in code reviews. That's when Mom's email popped up. Elise, honey, please confirm your dress size for the seating chart. Mom. But she hadn't just sent a simple request. No, my ever-efficient mother had accidentally attached the entire vendor planning spreadsheet. My cursor hovered over the file for a moment before I clicked. Why not? I'd seen enough of Lara's perfect party plans over the years. The spreadsheet opened to a tab labeled Guest Logistics. My eyes scanned down the color-coded rows until, there it was, my name. And right next to it, in clean Arial font, Backup Daughter Confirmed. My coffee mug slipped from my hand, splashing across the counter. But I barely noticed. My palms went ice cold as I scrolled through the rest of the document, each tab more detailed than the last. Lara and James, accomplishments, stretched on for 3 full pages. Harvard MBA, startup successes, charity board positions. Their dating timeline had its own tab, complete with professional photos from every milestone. I found my tab. It had my dress size, food allergies, wrong, by the way, and that label. Backup Daughter Confirmed. 4 tabs of their golden moments, and I got 3 cells and a label that felt like a slap. Remember how Mom used to say labels were for jars, not people? Funny how that rule never applied when it came to me. My phone buzzed. Sarah from work, probably checking about our morning meeting. Instead, she'd sent a link to a flight deal to Bali. Skip the drama. Come to Asia with me instead. We'll drink coconuts and judge tourists. I almost said yes. Actually, I typed out booking now 3 times. But something else was building in my chest, spreading like ice through my veins. Not just the familiar hurt. This was different, clearer, colder. I switched tabs and pulled up Alaska Airlines. First available flight to LA, direct from SeaTac. My fingers moved across the keyboard, filling in my credit card details before I could second-guess myself. The confirmation page loaded. Your flight is booked, Elise Morgan. Backup Daughter Confirmed. The words pulsed in my head like a countdown. I'd spent years accepting their labels, swallowing their dismissals, watching Lara sweep through life while I stayed safely in my lane. But something had shifted. Maybe it was seeing it there in black and white, or maybe I'd finally hit my limit for being the family's human safety net. I picked up my phone and texted Mom. Got the spreadsheet. Dress size is correct. See you at the party. She replied instantly. Wonderful. Lara will be so pleased. Of course she would. They all would be. The backup daughter, showing up right on cue, ready to play her supporting role in their perfect family portrait. I closed my laptop and walked to the window. Seattle's morning fog was rolling in, wrapping the skyscrapers in gray. Somewhere in those buildings, millions of people were using my code, never knowing my name. Just like at home, always present, never seen. Well, they wanted the backup daughter confirmed. Fine, I confirmed. But this time, I was done being invisible. The LAX terminal always smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams. I wheeled my carry-on past the baggage claim, where Mom waited with her signature air kiss greeting. You know the kind, where their cheek barely grazes yours, like they're afraid your mediocrity might be contagious. Oh, sweetie, couldn't you have pressed that skirt before the flight? She tugged at my hem, frowning. The party's in 5 hours. I swatted her hand away, gentler than I wanted to. Nice to see you too, Mom. The drive to their house was a greatest hits album of Lara updates. Her fiancé James's family connections, the wedding venue possibilities, the guest list that read like a Fortune 500 roster. I stared out the window at palm trees swaying in the smog-filtered sunlight, remembering summer afternoons when we were kids, Lara directing our backyard plays while I managed the cardboard props. Even then, I was background support. Dad barely glanced up from his phone when we arrived. Hi, honey. The valet company's giving me grief about the parking setup. Can you believe they want to charge extra for the north lot? He hurried past, already dialing another number. I dragged my suitcase upstairs to my old bedroom, now Lara's wedding planning headquarters, complete with mood boards and fabric swatches. My childhood photos had been cleared away to make room for her inspiration collages. The scent of vanilla and jasmine wafted through the hall, and there she was, my sister, the star of every show. Oh my God, you're here! Lara called out, not looking up from her phone. Her makeup was flawless, her hair styled in elegant waves. A makeup artist hovered nearby with a highlighting brush. We're running so behind. The florist totally messed up the orchid order. I set my bag down. Need any help? But she was already sweeping past me, trailing perfume and purpose. Mom! The welcome signs aren't centered. 5 hours later, I stood in the corner of the downtown ballroom, trying to disappear into the designer wallpaper. The space dripped luxury, cascading crystal chandeliers, white orchids suspended in glass globes, mirrors everywhere reflecting the city lights. 200 of LA's finest circulated with champagne flutes, their jewelry catching the light like stars. Remember when you were a kid and you'd spin in circles until the world blurred? That's how it felt watching Lara work the room. She floated from group to group in her cream silk dress, James proudly at her side, both of them glowing like they'd been lit from within. Every few minutes, someone's camera flash would pop, capturing another perfect moment. My champagne was warm. I slipped behind an artful wall of trailing flowers, seeking a moment's peace from the constant reminder of my peripheral existence. The blooms created a fragrant curtain, shielding me from the party's gleam. That's when I heard them. William? She's done so well for herself. My Uncle Richard's voice carried through the flowers. The startup, the connections, you must be proud. Oh, Lara's exceeded all our expectations, Dad replied, his voice warm with pride. Though we never doubted she would. That's why we invested everything in her future. And Elise? She's the older one, right? In Seattle? There was a pause, a soft chuckle. We always knew she'd be fine. She was the backup plan, insurance, you know, in case Lara fell off track. But Elise is reliable. She has her job, her apartment. She's fine. The champagne flute nearly shattered in my grip. My fingers had gone white around the stem, knuckles aching with pressure. Fine, reliable, backup plan. The words sliced through me with surgical precision, each one a careful incision into whatever childish hope I'd still carried that maybe, just maybe, they saw me as more than a safety net. The crystal stemware creaked in my grasp. One squeeze away from splintering, just like the last shred of illusion that I'd ever been more than their plan B. Behind me, the party sparkled on. Ahead, through gaps in the flowers, I could see my reflection fractured across a dozen mirrors. The backup daughter, multiplied infinitely, each version of me smaller than the last. I barely had time to process Dad's words when feedback squealed through the ballroom's sound system. My head snapped up, grateful for any distraction from the knife twisting in my chest. Good evening, everyone. That voice. I knew that voice. Tom Hartwell stood at the microphone, casual authority radiating from his tailored suit. My brain short-circuited. What was the CEO of my company doing here? The man whose signature appeared on my paychecks, whose TED Talks went viral, whose leadership had transformed our platform into a global powerhouse, that Tom Hartwell was standing in my sister's engagement party? The room fell silent. Even the waiters froze mid-pour. You could have heard a diamond earring drop. First, congratulations to the happy couple, Tom continued, raising his glass toward Lara and James. I look forward to finalizing our partnership next week, James. Though I must admit, his lips curved into a slight smile, this isn't quite how I planned our first meeting. Partnership? My head spun. The crystal flute was still death-gripped in my hand, forgotten. But while I'm here, Tom's voice shifted, grew warmer. I'd like to acknowledge someone else in this room, someone whose work deserves recognition. My chest tightened. No. He couldn't mean... Tom turned, his eyes finding mine through the flower wall with laser precision. Elise Morgan. The sound of my name in that space, in that voice, hit like a thunderclap. Heads turned, whispers rippled. I felt heat crawl up my neck. This woman, Tom continued, gesturing toward me, is the reason our company survived its darkest quarter. When our entire platform was crashing, when millions in revenue hung by a thread, Elise wrote the code that saved us. The elegant solution no one else saw. I wouldn't be standing here without her. The flowers around me trembled. Or maybe I was trembling. I couldn't tell anymore. In fact, Tom set down his glass and my heart stuttered. What was he doing? He bowed. Not a quick nod, not a casual dip. A full, respectful bow, right there in front of LA's elite. The kind of gesture that screamed, "This person matters." The gasp was collective, like all 200 guests had been punched in the solar plexus at once. Somewhere to my left, crystal shattered. Mom's wine glass hitting the marble floor. Phone cameras flashed like paparazzi spotlights. The room crackled with shocked energy. I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The world had tilted on its axis, leaving me suspended between what was and what suddenly could be. My body hummed with something electric, something that felt dangerously close to power. Through the chaos of murmurs and camera clicks, I caught fragments of conversation. That quiet one, can you believe, wrote the actual code. Tom Hartwell himself. Dad had gone pale, his earlier words about backup plans hanging in the air like smoke. Lara's perfect smile had cracked just slightly at the edges. And Mom? She stood frozen, staring at the broken glass at her feet, as if it held answers to questions she'd never thought to ask. Remember how I said I'd never felt more invisible than at this party? Scratch that. In this moment, I had never felt more seen. The sensation coursed through my veins like lightning, burning away decades of careful invisibility. My hands had stopped shaking. My spine straightened of its own accord. Tom was walking toward me now, his presence parting the crowd like a hot knife through butter. The flower wall no longer felt like a hiding place. It felt like a backdrop, framing me in this moment that would change everything. For the first time in my life, I didn't want to disappear. I wanted to shine. Tom's voice still echoed in my ears as James, Lara's hedge fund prince fiancé, finally emerged from wherever he'd been hiding. He strode toward the mic with that easy confidence that only comes from old money and newer success, all white teeth and controlled charm. Tom, you made it! James's voice boomed through the speakers. Everyone, the man who's about to transform our platform. But something was off. The way they shook hands, studied each other's faces. Wait. The slight hesitation in Tom's smile, James's momentary pause. They'd never met in person before. My tech-trained brain kicked into gear, processing the signals. These men were about to be major business partners, yet this engagement party was their first face-to-face? In my experience, deals at this level involved months of intimate meetings, not whatever this was. I drifted toward the bar, mind churning. The bartender slid me a fresh champagne without asking. Smart man. Revolutionized the entire space, James was saying, but I barely heard him. Something nagged at me about his company, about Lara's role in it. She'd never once mentioned Tom's involvement, and Lara wasn't exactly known for keeping quiet about powerful connections. The rest of the party blurred past. I smiled mechanically, dodged Mom's confused glances, and counted the minutes until I could escape. By the time I made it back to my hotel room, my shoes were killing me, but my mind was wide awake. I kicked off my heels and opened my laptop. The blue light felt harsh against the soft hotel lighting, but I barely noticed. My fingers flew across the keys, pulling up everything I could find about James's company, and by extension, Lara's startup that had merged with it last year. Remember those nights in grad school when you'd get so deep into coding that the sun would rise before you realized it? That's how I felt now, diving through filing after filing. Screenshots, pitch decks, investor presentations. Each document pulled me deeper. The familiarity hit me slowly at first. A phrase here, a workflow there. But then, my throat closed up. There it was, a flowchart I'd drawn years ago, down to the exact arrow placement. My hands started shaking as I opened another tab, then another. The deeper I went, the sicker I felt. You know that moment when you're solving a complex equation and everything suddenly, horribly adds up? This was that moment. I minimized the browser and pulled up my cloud drive. The file was still there, my original pitch deck from grad school, stored on my old laptop. The one I'd left at my parents' house when I moved to Seattle. The one Lara had borrowed to learn about tech, right before she started dating James. Side by side, the similarities were undeniable. Not just similar concepts, identical structures, my exact phrasing, my specific solutions to problems I'd spent months identifying. Even my hand-drawn flowcharts, just prettier. Professionally designed. The champagne turned to acid in my stomach. This wasn't accidental overlap. This wasn't parallel thinking. This was theft, pure and simple. My sister, my own sister, had stolen my work. And my parents? They must have known. They'd funded her startup with money that was supposed to be for my graduate studies. We believe in supporting innovative thinking, Dad had said back then. Innovative thinking. Right. The hotel room spun slightly. I grabbed the desk edge, steadying myself. The blue screen light suddenly felt like an interrogation lamp, illuminating years of lies and manipulation. A notification popped up on my phone. Mom, asking if I was coming to tomorrow's brunch. I stared at it, remembering her shattered wine glass, her face when Tom had acknowledged my work. Had she known then? Had she thought about the stolen pitch deck while watching her backup daughter finally get recognized? I opened another file. Then another. With each click, with each matching screenshot, the cold shock in my blood transformed into something else. Something harder. Something that burned. You know what's worse than being invisible? Finding out you were visible enough to be worth stealing from. I looked at the timestamp on my original pitch deck, then at the founding date of Lara's startup. The evidence sat there, digital and damning, like a smoking gun in pixels. The memory hit me like a physical blow. 4 years ago, during a quick weekend visit home, I'd left my laptop on the kitchen counter while helping Mom prep dinner. Lara had breezed in, designer workout gear and that practiced casual tone. Hey sis, can I borrow your laptop? Just need to check my email real quick. My phone's dead. I'd barely looked up from chopping vegetables. Sure, go ahead. The knife had kept moving, steady rhythm against the cutting board. Chop, chop, chop. The sound of my own oblivion. Now, sitting in my hotel room with the evidence glaring at me from 2 screens, that moment played on loop. The way she'd disappeared upstairs instead of staying in the kitchen. How long had she actually been gone? An hour? More? I pulled up my archived files again, hands trembling slightly. The original pitch deck was dated March 15th, 2019. Lara's company filing? December 2019. 9 months. 9 months between my creation and her innovation. You've always been so good with computers, Mom used to say, like it was some cute hobby. Meanwhile, they'd funded Lara's startup with money that was supposed to be for my graduate studies. We have to support her vision, Dad had insisted. Her vision. My work. My phone buzzed. Mom again. I let it go to voicemail, but she called right back. Taking a deep breath, I answered. Hi, Mom. Honey, about last night. Her voice had that careful tone she used when managing difficult situations. That was quite a surprise with your boss. Tom, I said. His name is Tom. Yes, well, she paused. Listen, darling. The next few days are really important for Lara and James. Could you just... please don't bring up work or any more surprises at the events. Let this be about Lara. The familiar pressure built in my chest, that lifetime of swallowing words, staying small, making space for Lara to shine. But this time it felt different. This time it made me want to scream. You knew, I said quietly, about my pitch deck, when Lara used my laptop that day. The silence on the other end stretched for 3 heartbeats. 4. I don't know what you're talking about, but her voice wavered slightly. Honey, you're not still hung up on those old school projects, are you? Lara built something real. My free hand curled into a fist. With my blueprint? Now you're being ridiculous. Mom's tone sharpened. Your sister worked very hard to steal my work. I'm not having this conversation. Classic mom, shutting down anything that threatened her perfect narrative. Just remember what I said. No work talk, no drama. This weekend is about family. Family, right. I hung up without saying goodbye. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped the phone. Turning back to my laptop, I started methodically backing up every file, every timestamp, every piece of evidence. I wasn't that naive girl anymore, the one who'd left her laptop unguarded in a house full of thieves. But as I tried accessing my old email archive to document the original sharing dates, something strange happened. The system glitched. Error messages popped up. Access denied. I tried again. Same result. My heart rate kicked up. This wasn't random. Someone was actively blocking my access to my own history. I opened my command terminal, fingers flying across the keys as I tried to trace the interference. The IP address made me sit back hard in my chair. It was coming from my parents' home network. They were actually trying to erase the evidence, right now, in real time. The betrayal felt physical, like a blow to the chest. Not just the original theft, but this calculated cover-up. They'd seen me get recognized by Tom last night, realized I might finally connect the dots, and now they were trying to bury the truth. All those years of being the reliable daughter, the quiet one, the backup plan, it wasn't just about favoring Lara. They'd been banking on my silence, counting on my compliance, using my own nature against me. I stared at the error messages, my reflection ghostly in the screen's blue light. They thought they could just delete history with a few keystrokes, but they'd forgotten something crucial. I wasn't just good with computers. I was better than all of them. I needed help. Real help, not just backups and screenshots. After 3 more failed attempts to access my archive, I called Marcus from IT back in Seattle. He'd helped me tackle impossible server issues before, and more importantly, he knew how to be discreet. Someone's definitely in there, he confirmed after I walked him through the interference. And they know what they're doing. This isn't amateur hour. My stomach clenched. Can you help me secure everything? Already on it. Keys clicked rapidly in the background. I'm setting up triple encrypted backups right now. But Elise, whoever's doing this has serious resources. You sure you wanna? Yes. I didn't hesitate. I need everything protected. Every timestamp. Every version. Remember those old spy movies where someone's frantically copying files while a progress bar inches along? That was my morning. Marcus talked me through creating unhackable backups while I paced my hotel room, checking my phone every few minutes. Mom had already left 3 messages about the family brunch I was late for. Finally, Marcus gave the all clear. It's locked down tight now, but seriously, be careful. This feels bigger than normal corporate stuff. If he only knew. I made it to brunch just as the mimosas were being poured. The restaurant's private room buzzed with conversation, all designer suits and air kisses. Lara held court at the center table, James beside her, both glowing with that special energy of people who think they've already won. I found a quiet corner spot and tried to look invisible, which, let's be honest, wasn't exactly a stretch in this crowd. But then I heard it. 2 men in sharp suits discussing the merger at the table behind me. 10 days, one said. Biggest deal of the quarter. If it closes, the other replied. These tech valuations are tricky. One wrong move. I stopped breathing. 10 days. The merger that would cement Lara's stolen success was happening in 10 days. My phone buzzed. A text from Tom. Investor dinner tonight. Small group. You should come. I stared at the message. Was this an opening or another trap? The restaurant Tom picked was one of those discreet places where deals actually happen, all dark wood and low voices. He was already there when I arrived, along with 3 others. But it was the woman in the crisp navy suit who caught my attention. Even seated, she radiated authority. Elise, Tom smiled. Meet Priya Malik. My pulse jumped. Everyone in tech knew Priya. She had a reputation for backing underdogs, but only after putting them through hell to prove their worth. She also had zero tolerance for corporate theft. Sit, she said, gesturing to the empty chair. Tom says you're the one who saved their Q3 numbers. Over the next hour, between careful bites of overpriced salmon, I watched Priya. She asked sharp questions about code architecture, scalability, market gaps. I answered honestly, letting my expertise show without overplaying my hand. Finally, as dessert arrived, she leaned back. And your sister's company? The one merging with James? Interesting model they have. The table went quiet. Even Tom seemed to hold his breath. I met her eyes. Very interesting, especially the origin story. Oh? Her eyebrow lifted slightly. I'd love to show you the original pitch deck sometime, from 2019. I kept my voice casual, but my meaning was clear. Priya didn't blink. She studied me for a long moment, then reached into her jacket. The business card she slid across the table was simple, just her name and a private number. I hate liars, she said quietly. Loop me in. 10 days. I had 10 days until the merger, and now I had an ally who could actually do something about it. I tucked the card away, feeling its weight like a key in my pocket. Time for some truth, Priya added, standing to leave. Don't you think? I nodded, watching her go. The countdown had officially begun. The Seattle rain welcomed me home like an old friend. You know that specific northwest drizzle that somehow gets under your coat no matter what? That's what greeted me as I hurried from my rideshare to the law office downtown. The digital trail is solid, Sandra Chen, my IP attorney, confirmed. She spread printouts across her desk, timestamps, metadata, even ancient GitHub commits. Your original work predates their company by 4 years. The Copyright Office should process this quickly. I rubbed my temples. And the evidence that they accessed it? The laptop logs help, but... She hesitated. Family cases are messy. Are you sure you want to... Yes. The word came out sharper than I meant it. Sorry, it's just... I've spent my whole life being sure about nothing. Now I'm sure about this. Remember those old family photos where everyone's smiling but one person looks slightly out of place? That was always me. The reliable one. The quiet one. The one who'd understand if Christmas money went to Lara's acting classes instead of my coding camp. My throat tightened at the memory of Dad saying, "You'll be fine without it. You always are." Back home that evening, I kicked off my heels and collapsed onto my couch. The city lights twinkled through the rain-streaked windows, but I barely saw them. Exhaustion hit me like a physical weight. When was the last time I'd really slept? My phone buzzed. A news alert. There she was, Lara, radiant in Vogue's 30 Under 30 feature. The headline made me sick. Tech's New Princess, How Lara Morgan Built a Digital Empire. Built. Right. I scrolled through the photos, Lara in her sleek office, Lara at tech conferences, Lara sharing her inspirational journey. Each image was a perfectly curated lie. The article gushed about her innovative vision and breakthrough algorithm. My algorithm, the one I'd spent 18 months perfecting in grad school. Something cracked inside me. Maybe it was seeing her praised for my work. Maybe it was the quote from Mom. Lara always had that special spark. Or maybe it was just everything. Every birthday overlooked. Every achievement dismissed. Every "not now, honey, Lara has a recital." My hands shook as I opened my laptop. The evidence folder sat there, bulging with proof. One click and I could delete it all. Just let it go. Accept my role as the good daughter. The backup. The one who doesn't make waves. I actually drafted the email. Dear Sandra, please disregard our meeting today. But my finger froze over the send button. The rain intensified outside, drumming against the windows. In that sound, I heard something else. My own voice. Younger, excited about code and possibilities. The version of me that stayed up late debugging because she believed in building something real. The one who thought merit mattered more than marketing. They hadn't just stolen my work. They'd tried to steal my voice. I deleted the draft. Instead, I forwarded the entire evidence folder to Priya's private email. No message needed, just pure, documented truth. My phone buzzed again. Another family photo from the engagement party. Everyone beaming at Lara while I stood at the edge trying to smile. But this time, looking at it didn't hurt. Because this time, I wasn't that girl anymore. I curled up on my window seat, watching the Seattle skyline blur through the rain. The city felt different now. Not a refuge from my family's drama, but a launching pad for something else. Something true. You know what's funny about rock bottom? Sometimes it's not actually the bottom. Sometimes it's the foundation. I'd forgotten how clarity feels, like caffeine hitting your bloodstream, but better. Every morning that week, I woke up before my alarm, mind already racing with next steps. The rain had finally cleared, leaving Seattle's skyline crisp against blue skies. Maybe that's why everything felt sharper, including my resolve. Walk me through it again, Priya said, perched on the edge of her office chair. We'd commandeered a private conference room at her firm, walls now plastered with timelines and documentation. Every detail matters. You know those moments when you suddenly realize you're not alone anymore? When I looked around that room, at Tom's steady presence, at Priya's laser focus, something unclenched in my chest. These people weren't here for Lara's sparkle or my parents' social circle. They were here for the truth. The original code framework, I began, pulling up my grad school files, was completed in March 2019. Here's the GitHub repository. I pointed to the screen. Notice the timestamp? Tom leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. And Lara's company filed their first patent when? January 2023. I pulled up their filing. Using virtually identical architecture. The only changes are cosmetic. Variable names, comment structures. But the core logic? I split-screened the documents. It's mine. Priya's eyes narrowed as she compared them. And you're certain about the laptop access? Here's the login record from that weekend. I handed her another printout. Lara used my computer for 6 hours while I was at a friend's wedding. The files were accessed, downloaded, and I pulled up one more document, sent to this email address. Tom whistled softly. Your father's business account. The same one that later funded her seed round. The words still tasted bitter. They didn't just steal it, they planned it. Remember how satisfying it feels to solve a puzzle? To watch scattered pieces click into place? That's what the next few days were like. We worked methodically, meticulously, building an airtight case. Each morning I'd bring fresh coffee and my latest findings. Each evening we'd refine our presentation, anticipating every possible defense. 2 days before the merger, Priya called a final review session. The sun was setting over Elliott Bay, painting her office in gold. She stood at the window, arms crossed, considering. The evidence is solid, she said finally, but exposure needs to be strategic. If we do this, she turned to face me, we do it loud. No whispers, no backroom deals. Full disclosure, full consequences. Are you ready for that? I thought about my mother's dismissive glances, my father's casual cruelty, the way they'd trained me to stay small, stay quiet, stay convenient. Yes, I said. I'm ready. That night I went shopping. The merger dress code called for white, all white, to symbolize new beginnings or some nonsense. I walked past racks of cream-colored suits and ivory dresses until I found it. A tailored blazer and pants in deep, unapologetic red. The saleswoman raised an eyebrow. The invitation specified white, she reminded me. I know. I smiled, running my fingers over the fabric. But I'm done blending in. The morning of the merger, I stood in front of my mirror, smoothing the red suit into place. My hands should have been shaking, but they weren't. Through the window, I could see the venue, one of Seattle's oldest buildings, its stone facade gleaming in the morning light. Cars were already pulling up, disgorging guests in their pristine white outfits. My phone buzzed. A text from Tom. Ready? I took one last look in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the backup daughter anymore. She wasn't asking for permission or apologizing for existing. She was a force of nature in crimson. Ready, I texted back. The walk to the venue felt like floating. People turned to stare, first at my suit, then at my face as recognition dawned. I heard whispers, saw phones lifting to capture the moment. But I kept my eyes forward, stride steady. Tom waited at the entrance, impeccable in white himself. When he saw me, a smile tugged at his lips. "Subtle," he murmured. "Not anymore," I replied. We shared a look of perfect understanding. Then I squared my shoulders and nodded once. It was time. I settled into a seat near the front as Lara glided to the podium, radiant in white silk. The room hummed with anticipation. Investors, tech press, even a few celebrities drawn to what everyone assumed would be the merger announcement of the year. My sister's smile was luminous, practiced, perfect. 4 years ago, I had a vision, she began, her voice carrying that familiar sparkle. A vision of transforming how we think about data security. You know that moment when your whole body goes quiet? When even your breath seems to pause? That's how it felt as I stood up, my red suit like a flare in the sea of white. "I'd like to request 10 minutes of the committee's time," I said, my voice steadier than I'd imagined possible. The muscle in Lara's jaw twitched, the tiniest tell she'd had since childhood. Tom nodded from his seat. "The floor is yours." My heels clicked against marble as I approached the podium. Lara hadn't moved, her fingers white-knuckled on the edges. "This won't take long," I murmured, just for her. The look she gave me could have frozen hell. The first slide appeared behind us. My original GitHub repository, timestamp clear as day. March 15th, 2019. "Let's talk about vision," I said, turning to face, "and timing, and truth." Each click of my presentation felt like a heartbeat. Logan records, download timestamps, email trail. The room's energy shifted. I could feel it like static before a storm. Then came the side-by-side comparison. My original architecture next to Lara's patent filing. Identical. Undeniable. Someone gasped. A pen clattered to the floor. My mother, 3 rows back, had gone pale as chalk. "Notice the core logic structure," I continued, highlighting key sections. "The variable relationships, the security protocols, even the comment formatting." I paused, letting it sink in. All created 4 years before Lara's company existed. Priya rose then, elegant and precise in her white pantsuit. "As lead investor for the Merger Evaluation Committee," she said, her voice cutting through the tension, "I feel compelled to address what we're seeing." She turned to face the crowd. "These documents present clear evidence of intellectual property theft and investor deception." The words hung in the air like smoke. Lara's perfect smile had crumbled, leaving something raw and desperate in its place. I watched her eyes dart around the room, searching for allies, finding none. "The implications for shareholders are significant," Priya continued. "Not only regarding the validity of existing patents, but also concerning the intentional misrepresentation of original ownership." "That's enough." Our father's voice cracked through the room. He stood, face flushed. "This is a family matter that—" "No," Tom cut in, his tone glacial. "This is a legal matter, a financial matter, and," he looked directly at Lara's fiancé, "a matter of trust between future business partners." I hadn't looked at Lara's fiancé yet, couldn't bring myself to witness someone else's world imploding, but now I heard his chair scrape back. He stood slowly, the only person in the room besides me not wearing white. His dark suit seemed suddenly appropriate, like he was attending a funeral. "Was any of this yours?" he asked Lara. The question fell like a stone into silence. She opened her mouth, closed it. Her mascara was starting to smudge at the corners. "Lara!" His voice cracked. "Was any of it real?" The silence stretched further. Someone's phone buzzed, unnaturally loud in the hush. Lara's lips trembled, but no sound came out. He nodded once, a sharp jerk of his head. Then he turned and walked toward the door, each step echoing. The heavy wooden doors opened, closed, gone. The room erupted in whispers. Phones appeared everywhere, recording, documenting. I could hear fragments of conversations. Entire valuation based on legal implications of fraud. Wedding already planned. Lara still hadn't moved from the podium. She stood there, perfect posture, perfect dress, perfect makeup now streaking down her cheeks. For a moment, just a moment, I saw past the glamour to the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The sister I'd loved before ambition ate her alive, but then she lifted her chin, eyes hard as diamonds, and whatever sisterly softness I'd felt crystallized into certainty. I'd made the right choice. The room dissolved into chaos. Remember that scene in movies where someone drops a match into gasoline? This was worse. Investors shot up from their chairs, phones pressed to ears, voices climbing over each other like ivy on fire. My firm has $3 million tied up in legal needs to review the who's handling damage control for. I stayed in my seat, hands folded in my lap, watching the storm I'd unleashed. Funny how calm you can feel at the eye of a hurricane. The taste of coffee from this morning's breakfast still lingered on my tongue, that last normal moment before everything changed. Lara stumbled back from the podium, her white heels catching on the stage steps. Dad lunged forward to steady her, but she jerked away from his grip. Her mascara had left perfect black trails down her cheeks, like ink bleeding on expensive paper. "This is insane," she choked out, voice cracking. You don't understand what—" But whatever defense she'd planned died in her throat. She turned and fled, her designer dress a white blur through the double doors. Dad chased after her, calling her name like she was still 5 years old and running away from piano practice. Mom sat frozen in her chair, staring straight ahead. I wondered if she was remembering that day she'd helped Lara borrow my laptop. If she was counting up the cost of every little betrayal that led us here. "Ms. Morgan?" I looked up. One of the senior partners, silver-haired, Brooks Brothers suit, was gesturing toward the front of the room. "If you wouldn't mind joining us?" My legs felt surprisingly steady as I stood. The crowd parted like water around me as I made my way forward. Priya waited there with 3 other investors, their faces set in granite-hard lines. "The Integrity Committee would like to speak with you privately," Priya said, her voice carrying just enough to silence the remaining chatter. "If you'd be willing to stay?" I nodded. What else was there to do? A security team materialized. When had they been called? And began efficiently clearing the room. I caught fragments of their instructions. "Due to ongoing legal implications, please exit in an orderly. Your firms will be contacted." My mother finally moved then, rising from her chair like a sleepwalker. "Wait," she said, her voice thin. "We're her parents. We should be—" "Mr. and Mrs. Morgan." The head of security cut her off, not unkindly. "I need to inform you that due to your demonstrated breach of ethics and potential complicity in intellectual property theft, you are no longer permitted on these premises or in any future proceedings related to this matter." Mom's face went slack. But we funded—" "That's precisely the problem, isn't it?" Priya's voice could have frozen nitrogen. "Your funding of stolen intellectual property makes you party to fraud. The ethics board will be in touch through appropriate legal channels." Dad had returned, without Lara, just in time to hear this. He stood in the doorway, face flushed red as a stop sign. "Now see here." "Sir." The security guard stepped forward. "Please exit the building immediately, or we'll be forced to escort you out." I watched my parents deflate like punctured balloons. All those years of social climbing, of polishing their golden child's pedestal, gone in an instant. Mom's hand trembled as she clutched her designer purse. Dad's shoulders slumped like all the starch had been ironed out of him. They looked at me then. Really looked at me, maybe for the first time in decades. I saw the moment they realized what they'd lost. Not just their standing or their investments, but their backup plan. Their reliable daughter. Their safety net. "Elise," Mom whispered. "Please." I turned away. The security team moved in, professional and firm, guiding my parents toward the exit. The last thing I heard was the click of my mother's heels, fading down the marble hallway like the ending notes of a song no one wanted to hear anymore. Priya touched my elbow lightly. "Shall we begin?" I took a deep breath and faced the waiting investors. The real work was just starting. The investor boardroom felt different now. Maybe it was the late afternoon sun slanting through those floor-to-ceiling windows, or maybe it was just me, seeing everything through new eyes. The mahogany table gleamed like liquid amber, and somewhere in the building's sophisticated ventilation system, the faintest trace of coffee and leather mingled with fresh-cut flowers. Remember how your first apartment feels different the morning after you move in? When all the boxes are unpacked and suddenly the space is yours? That's how this moment felt. Like claiming territory. Like belonging. Tom set his leather satchel on the table with unusual care. I'd seen that bag 100 times in passing, usually stuffed with contracts or tech specs, but never handled quite like this. He caught my questioning look and smiled. "I've been holding on to something," he said, waiting for the right moment. His fingers worked the brass clasp deliberately. "After what happened today, I think that moment's here." Priya leaned forward in her chair, as curious as I was. The other investors had dispersed, leaving just the three of us in that sunlit room. The silence felt weighted, like the pause before an orchestra strikes its first note. "You remember the Collins Building incident?" Tom asked. My throat tightened. Did I remember? The acrid smell of smoke hit me like a sensory flashback. That terrible Thursday when an electrical surge had sparked a fire in the tech lab. We'd lost thousands in equipment, but the real threat had been to our core servers. If those had gone down... "The day you saved our entire platform," Tom continued, answering his own question. He reached into the satchel and withdrew a small wooden box, about the size of a hardback novel. The wood was dark, hand-polished maple that caught the light like honey. "I found this in the cleanup," he said, setting it on the table between us. "Kept it all this time, thinking someday." He gestured for me to open it. My hands weren't quite steady as I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in cream-colored velvet, lay my old employee badge. The edges were scorched, warped slightly from heat exposure. The plastic was bubbled in one corner where it had started to melt, but my photo was still clear, and beneath it, my name and title stood out in crisp corporate font. "You ran back in," Tom said quietly. "Against security protocol, against common sense, probably. But you knew exactly where to go, what to save. 15 minutes of your crazy bravery kept us from losing everything." I remembered. I'd been so focused that day, operating on pure instinct and adrenaline. The heat had been intense, but all I could think about was reaching that secondary server bank, implementing the emergency protocols we'd designed but never thought we'd need. "The badge was on your desk when the sprinklers went off," Tom explained. "Found it later, thought about replacing it, but..." He shrugged. "Sometimes battle scars tell the better story." He stood then, lifting a small brass easel from his bag. It was the kind used to display precious documents or rare books. With careful movements, he positioned it on the antique mantel that crowned the boardroom's marble fireplace. "This room," he said, "has hosted some of the biggest deals in tech history. But it's never displayed anything quite like this." Priya rose to help him adjust the angle of the easel. Together, they placed my scorched badge in its new home, propped perfectly to catch the light. The effect was striking, like a museum piece, but more personal, more powerful. "You saved us that day," Tom said simply. "Let this remind you, remind everyone, what real value looks like." I stared at my badge, transformed now from a simple corporate ID into something else entirely. The scorched edges caught the sunlight, creating a kind of halo effect. Every burn mark, every warp in the plastic told a story of competence under fire, of worth, of impact. My fingertips brushed the glass. All those quiet years, all those moments of being overlooked or pushed aside, they felt different now. Not erased, but reframed. Like the badge itself, transformed by fire into something stronger. You know that moment when you finally see yourself the way you should have been seen all along? It hits you right in the chest, a kind of beautiful ache. I traced my name through the glass one more time, feeling the slight texture of the heat damage beneath my finger. The badge caught the light and threw it back, no longer just a corporate credential, but a testament, proof of every time I'd chosen to rise instead of retreat. 6 weeks later, I was back in that same boardroom, but everything felt different. The morning light streamed through those floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the polished table where I'd once sat in judgment. Now, I was here as a featured speaker for their Innovation Leaders series. Remember how I used to shrink myself, try to take up less space? Not anymore. My heels clicked confidently across the marble as I set up my presentation materials. "And here she is," Tom announced to the gathered group of fresh-faced tech graduates and rising stars. The woman who was nearly erased but brought the house down instead. A ripple of recognition moved through the room. These days, my story had become something of a legend in Seattle's tech circles. Not that I was looking for fame, but I won't lie. The validation felt pretty sweet. "Can you tell us about that day?" one of the interns asked, gesturing toward my framed badge on the mantel. "The fire, I mean?" I smiled, remembering the chaos, the smoke, the split-second decision that changed everything. Sometimes the biggest moments come disguised as disasters, I said. You just have to trust your instincts and run toward the fire instead of away from it. The young woman, barely 22, I'd guess, drifted over to the fireplace. Her fingers traced the glass covering my scorched badge, just as mine had done weeks earlier. There was something poetic about it, watching another woman draw strength from my battle scar. My phone buzzed. Another update from my lawyer. Lara's company was facing a class action suit from angry investors. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd built her entire image on stolen dreams, and now those same dreams were crumbling around her. You want to know the strangest part? I didn't feel an ounce of satisfaction from her downfall. Okay, maybe a tiny ounce. But mostly, I felt free. Free from the weight of being the reliable one, the backup plan, the safety net for someone else's spotlight. My parents? Last I heard, they'd gone surprisingly quiet. Their social media accounts, once flooding feeds with Lara's achievements, sat dormant. Their country club circles, those carefully curated friendship groups, had quietly excluded them from the latest charity galas. Turns out, nobody wants to associate with people who'd steal from their own daughter. Their phones probably still rang, but not with the same social butterflies and business contacts anymore. Funny how quickly a carefully constructed facade can crumble when the truth comes out. Ms. Morgan? The intern's voice pulled me back to the present. What would you tell someone who feels invisible in their own story? I closed my laptop, letting the question settle. Through the windows, Seattle's skyline stretched vast and gleaming. Somewhere out there, another quiet genius was probably swallowing her words, doubting her worth. I'd tell them that being underestimated is actually a superpower, I said, standing. When people don't see you coming, they never expect you to be the one who changes the game. The room hummed with energy as I gathered my things. These bright young faces, eager to make their mark. They reminded me of myself, before I learned to wear my power openly. Remember how this all started? A forwarded email, a cruel label, years of being pushed to the margins of my own family's story. Now here I was, standing tall in a room where my scorched badge had become a symbol of resilience. I smoothed down my blazer, power red of course, and headed for the door. The heavy wooden panels swung open, then closed behind me with a satisfying click. But before they did, I caught one last glimpse of that badge on the mantel, its burned edges catching the morning light like a crown. You know what they say about karma? Sometimes she works through spreadsheets and timestamps instead of cosmic justice. Sometimes she wears Louboutins and carries a laptop. I wasn't the backup. I was the blueprint. I believe stories like this find us for a reason. If this one touched you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day, and tomorrow's might be the one your heart's been waiting for.